Welcome to my online presentation for Indigenous Futures. My name is Christina Dye and today I will be outlining my learning journey throughout the ED4461 subject. Assessment Task 1 required me to take an existing lesson plan and to embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pedagogical approaches and perspectives into it. I selected a curriculum to classroom lesson for a Year 5 class called Measuring Time. The lesson originally involved investigating different ways that time can be measured, for example with calendars, clocks, timelines and hourglasses. I identified that there was a gap in Indigenous knowledges present in the lesson, so I made key changes to address this. Having now completed the learning content for this subject and receiving feedback from my lecturer, I believe I am now able to review my changes. I have three key aims in this presentation. Firstly, to outline pedagogies and perspectives that I will embed across the lesson. Secondly, I will articulate my reasoning for the choices. And finally, I'll justify how the changes will improve learning outcomes. But before I outline these changes to the C2C lesson plan, I would like to provide a rationale for incorporating Indigenous pedagogies and perspectives into the classroom in the first place. As teachers, we are guided by the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. They outline what we should be achieving at each career stage to improve our practice. Standard 1.3 and 1.4 directly correlate to the embedding of Indigenous pedagogies and perspectives, thus it is our professional responsibility as teachers to do so. In addition, the Australian curriculum states that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' history and cultures cross-curriculum priority should be implemented across all key learning areas and provides all students with the opportunity to engage in reconciliation, respect and recognition. Finally, the Embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Perspectives in Schools framework was created by the Department of Education and Training to meet this exact need. They state that teachers have a responsibility to give all students an understanding and respect for these cultures. At this point, I feel that it is important to state that all students will benefit from the incorporation of Indigenous cultures into the curriculum, not only those who come from Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. This is supported by both the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, as well as the Department of Education and Training. Throughout my learning in this subject, I have been introduced to three frameworks which have guided my pedagogical decisions in this assessment task. Firstly, the ED4461 framework was constructed to ensure the needs of Indigenous students are met by outlining 10 ways that educators should be incorporating perspectives into their teaching and learning. The red arrows indicate strategies that I used to plan my lesson, whereas the yellow arrows show the strategies used within the lesson. Secondly, the 8 Ways framework developed by Tyson Yunkaporta outlines 8 different ways that teachers can embed Indigenous ways of knowing and doing into their teaching. Unlike the ED4461 framework, the 8 Ways framework lists Aboriginal pedagogies rather than strategies for planning and teaching. The yellow arrows indicate pedagogies that are used in the mathematics lesson. And finally, Dr. Uncle Ernie Grant's Holistic Teaching and Learning Framework has been used as a guide for planning my lesson in a holistic way. He identifies that Indigenous people have a holistic view of the world, incorporating the links between land, language, and culture. I used the framework as a planning tool, placing measuring time as a topic in the centre and making links to each of the sections. In the orientating stage of the lesson, I made 2 key changes that meet the Developing Strong Community Partnerships section of the ED4461 framework and the Community and Land Link section of the 8 Ways framework. Building relationships with local Indigenous elders will assist with embedding Indigenous perspectives into the curriculum and making those links more authentic. The Queensland Studies Authority believe that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have the cultural knowledge and skills to impart specific knowledge into the classroom. The QSA also outlined protocols for forming effective relationships with elders that will be followed. Having a relationship with an Indigenous elder will allow the teachers to know the methods that the local Indigenous groups used in the past to tell time. An acknowledgement of country provides an opportunity to show respect to the traditional landowners and the continuing connection of Indigenous people to country. According to Reconciliation Australia, it is a significant and symbolic gesture. The Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies map will be used to identify the local Indigenous group to be recognised. And at the beginning of the lesson, the teacher will deliver an acknowledgement of country to reaffirm the links between land, language and culture in the classroom context. The enhancing phase of the lesson draws from the story sharing and symbols and images section of the Younger Porter's 8 Ways framework. The Queensland Curriculum and Assessment Authority describe yarning circles as a harmonious, creative and collaborative way of communicating to enrich learning experiences for students and build respectful relationships. Ruth and Wooten list some of the features of yarning, including storytelling, ideas, talking and listening. They state that some of the benefits include participation and inclusion. In this stage of the lesson, the students will engage in a yarning session based on the question, how could Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples tell the time before the introduction of clocks and calendars? According to the Department of Education and Training, incorporating Indigenous content knowledge is a way to give all students an understanding and respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditional and contemporary cultures. When the curriculum offers Indigenous perspectives, all students can gain a greater appreciation and respect for diversity. In the lesson, images, diagrams, and interactive tools from the Indigenous Weather Knowledge resource from the Bureau of Meteorology will be used. Furthermore, information relating to the local Indigenous community gained from collaboration with the elder will be embedded into the lesson in this stage. The assessment phase of the lesson will cover the assessment and reporting aspect of the ED4461 framework. It is crucial that Indigenous content knowledge is assessed just like any other content would be. Cross-curriculum priorities and general capabilities from the Australian curriculum can help teachers to achieve this. According to the Australian Curriculum and Assessment and Reporting Authority, it is crucial that Indigenous content knowledge is embedded and assessed across all key learning areas for 2 reasons. Firstly, so Indigenous students can see their cultures reflected in their learning, can fully participate and build their self-esteem, and secondly, because it allows all students, regardless of their background, to increase their knowledge and skills. ACARA state that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Histories and Cultures cross-curriculum priority provides opportunities for all students to deepen their knowledge of Australia. In this lesson, the organising idea of culture will be focused upon. Idea number 5 states that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's ways of life are uniquely expressed through ways of being, knowing, thinking and doing. This is addressed and reflected in the lesson where students learn about the traditional practices of local Indigenous groups and engage with an elder. The general capability of intercultural understanding requires students to engage with diverse cultures to create connections and develop mutual respect. In this lesson, the key idea of recognizing culture and developing respect will be focused upon. The lesson works towards achieving the Level 4 capability, which states that students will develop respect for cultural diversity, explore and compare cultural knowledge, beliefs and practices, and investigate culture and cultural identity. Finally, the way students will be assessed will be changed to suit the needs of the students in the class. The original C2C lesson plan required students to be assessed using a worksheet, but through my journey in this subject, I have learned that verbal and/or anecdotal notes are often a more effective way to assess students, particularly those from Indigenous backgrounds. Thus, the lesson has been adjusted to allow for alternative assessment modes. Throughout this presentation, I have identified various pedagogies and perspectives that I have embedded across the orientating, enhancing, and assessment phases of the C2C mathematics lesson. This included consulting with a local Indigenous elder, making an acknowledgement of country, conducting a yarning circle, incorporating Indigenous content knowledge, and assessing Indigenous content knowledge. I have reinforced my reasoning for these choices throughout by using research and policy documents. I have identified 4 key ways that students' learning outcomes will improve because of my changes. I have met the learning needs of Indigenous students, incorporated different areas of the Australian curriculum, made learning relevant to context, and incorporated authentic research and knowledge. I used a range of frameworks including ED4461, 8 Ways, and the Holistic Teaching and Learning Framework. I also drew upon a range of curriculum and policy documents, research, and authentic resources throughout the presentation. Thank you for engaging in my online presentation for Indigenous Futures.